Okay, before I start this video properly, I want to ask everyone to be civil, and if you are not able to properly express and argument your opinions, please refrain from commenting. I know that the Drag Race fandom is really young, probably younger than 18 in most cases, so sometimes actually understanding people is hard. We're not even going to talk about how nuance is basically non-existent, but most of my audience is between the ages of 18 and 34, so I'm hoping for an actual grown-up discussion. Are we cool? Thanks. Last week or so, I posted my How Drag Race Has Changed Picking Its Winners video, and I really enjoyed reading most of the comments there. Something that I did not mention in the video is that a winner sometimes will be chosen based on marketability, as in, how well will that person's win reflect on the show? I did not mention it because I was trying to explain how Drag Race, competition-wise, still can make sense, even though, yeah, marketability and headlines like "Drag Race crowns its first trans winner" do bring the show so much positive clout. However, there were some comments where people just did not seem to want to understand nuance, so somebody just came and said blonde and white, meaning that is the way Drag Race picks its winners. But what if I told you that this is not true now, and furthermore, it never was. But before we continue, I just want to give a shout out to all of my supporters on Patreon. Guys, I'm trying my best to find the time to write the last couple of episodes of Heroes vs. Villains. They're coming, I promise. Thank you all for your support, and if you cannot support me on Patreon, you can like, comment, and subscribe on this video. So, what's the background behind the blonde and white notion? Well, during the press tour for All Stars 4, Naomi was asked this.
Do you think there is a formula?
Blonde and white? I'm just kidding. Facts are facts!
Now, we should always listen to the experience of marginalized groups, especially if they're pointing out oppressive ways societal systems have treated and are treating them. However, we should also always look at the context of any given statement. The press tour was happening after All Stars 4 had already been filmed in its entirety, so Naomi knew that she wasn't going to be in that top 2, and thus she already knew that she had lost the season. Furthermore, she was there for the season. She saw that Trinity dominated it, so she was probably expecting Trinity, another white queen, to win. Naomi could criticize the show, say some buzzwordy things that will get social media to talk about her, and still get only minimal or almost no damage from it. All Stars 4 happened after the first 3 All Star seasons, whose winners are Chad Michaels, Alaska Thunderfuck, and Trixie Mattel. Looking at their crowning looks, yeah, those are all blonde and white queens. Naomi probably was joking with her comment, but as you can see, she planted a seed in the minds of many that Drag Race loves pushing white queens who usually wear blonde, which can be seen with the first 3 All-Stars winners especially. However, none of those 3 queens won their seasons because of their race. Chad was the best competitor overall, as was Alaska, and while Trixie may not have been the overall best competitor, she still had a better track record than Kennedy, so all 3 of their wins make sense with the challenges, the queens, and the formats that were in those seasons. In fact, every single All-Star season's best competitor is a white queen. Chad, Alaska, Ben de la Creme, Trinity the Tuck, Miss Cracker, Ginger Minge, or Eureka, depending on if you subscribe to RuPaul's "if you're not in the top, you're in the bottom" nonsense. And now, Jinx Monsoon on All-Star 7. For All-Star 6, Raja O'Hara actually ties Eureka with her track record, but the show did not crown any of the 3 queens I mentioned. They crowned Kylie, also a white queen. So, is Naomi right? Her comment and subsequent fandom outrage may have only affected the results of some future seasons, which in the mind of some may seem like Drag Race admitting their wrongdoings of the past and changing for the better, but that's just surface level nonsense. Let's look at all of the winners of Drag Race and Drag Race All Stars and see just how many blonde and white queens we have there. Obviously, hair color doesn't apply here exactly, given that, most queens wear wigs, except for Alaska, that is her hair, she doesn't wear wigs. But some do prefer wearing a specific color, so if they mostly wore blonde wigs on their season, we'll consider them blonde and white. BB, Tyra, and Raja obviously do not fit the criteria here, and Sharon is the show's first white winner. Sharon wore different colored wigs on her season quite often, but mostly did do black or white wigs. I mean, her crowning wig is literally black and white. Oh, the irony. However, because of all of the background information that we know about Sharon's time on season 4 and how non-white queens were painted as villains when Sharon was being actively racist behind the scenes, I would say that we can count her here. Obviously, Sharon did not win because she is white, but we're looking at just surface level nonsense. Jinx is white, but mostly wears ginger hair, so no. Bianca is obviously a no, but Violet is an interesting case. While she doesn't often wear blonde hair, you can very much so argue that season 7 was the season where Drag Race tried putting a strong emphasis on the white queens. With that season being the first season where the top 3 queens were all white and where non-white queens were overlooked because of things that you couldn't really see in the competition. So as a result of her season, while not actually being blonde and white, we can kinda count Violet here. No, nobody's erasing the fact that she's actually of Hispano-American descent. However, you can be of Hispano-American descent or Latino and be white, so just calm down. Next we have Bob, so no. Sasha is white, but like bald, so no. The twist introduced in her season was not even there to favor her. It was there because of how inconsequential the lip syncs on season 9 were. Aquaria, we could say is blonde and white, I'll give you that, sure, but then we have Evie, Jada, and Simone, who are none of that. Our latest winner in Willow is white, and even though she's blonde here, most of the time she opted for wearing darker hair on the season. So that's 3 regular season winners that fit the blonde and white criteria. Got it. How about the All-Stars winners? Okay, Chad and Alaska are here. Trixie is of Native American descent, but her drag character is that sort of white blonde bimbo. So okay, fine, I'll give you this one. Trinity is white, but doesn't often wear blonde, so that's a no. Monet and Shay are also clearly a no. Kylie does fit this category, and Jinx, again, does not. So that's 7 out of 21 winners, or 6 out of 13 back when Naomi said what she said. Obviously, you can tell that her comment made some sort of a difference, but again, it was a very surface level comment. Sharon won because she was a good competitor and because the audience preferred her way of drag to the highly feminine, fashion-oriented, and pageanty style of drag. If you're looking at the screen now, you see that the 6 queens I have shown are all queens of color. Surface level, it's blatant racism from the audience, which is definitely present, do not get me wrong, but people also do get tired of same style of art being presented over and over and over again. It's more or less coincidental that Sharon just happened to be the person that brought that change and a different style onto Drag Race. Just think, if Nina had been crowned instead of BB as she should have because she was the best competitor on that season, we wouldn't be having this Sharon problem. As I've mentioned in my How to Win Drag Race video, every next winner has to be different from the previous one. Which, by the way, this has come full circle now, with people coming onto my videos to tell me about that, as if I haven't brought up that idea in the popular Drag Race discourse. Thus, somebody who does drag like Sharon was most probably going to come at any time and win. It's just a bad look in a way that it was Sharon who was the one who did so. Chad also had a very female impersonation, pageanty style of drag, like the 6 queens that I've shown previously, and she lost season 4, and she's blonde and white. How come? She should have won if the whole blonde and white thing is correct. It's actually very possible that Chad would have won season 4 had the audience not grown tired of that type of drag, which is why, and I assume that this is common knowledge now, All-Stars 1 was made for her to win it. This wasn't Drag Race creating a season to have a blonde and white queen win it. It's Drag Race creating a season where a legend of the industry, who was the closest to winning the crown out of all of the runner-ups up to that point, and who was the production's pick for the crown, would get to be in the Hall of Fame. Similar thing happened to Alaska and All-Stars 2. And while the show did push her towards the crown, it wasn't because she was blonde and White, it was because of her great performance in Season 5 and her great work outside the show. All-Stars 3 was not made for Trixie to win it. It was geared more towards a Ben de la Creme win. However, All-Stars 3 is a perfect example of too many twists messing up a season and messing up what the show planned and giving us a winner that many people don't think should have won. Aquaria, interestingly enough, did have some racial undertones in her storyline on Season 10, mostly during the first 3 to 4 episodes of the season when she and the Vixen clashed. However, after that, you could see Aquaria completely understanding the Vixen and growing as a person. Then the show somehow also tried to do the same storyline with Eureka, but then Eureka did not change on the show, but she was still the hero, and the Vixen somehow became the villain. Guys, I don't know. Lastly, Violet, as I've said, was in a season where the shows and the fandom's racism did come out of the woodworks, with the way that they treated Pearl and Max versus the way that they treated Jasmine and Kennedy. This season did also have a new versus old theme to it, so again, even though Violet may not 100% fit the criteria, she did win as a result of the show favoring the young, predominantly white queens that the audience was gravitating towards. So, was Naomi right? Somewhat. Drag race culture is a product of US culture that's built on racism and dividing people into categories of black versus white, Democrats versus Republicans, us versus them, aka extreme binaries that erase everything in between. That's why, more often than not, Drag Race will give unnecessary villain edits to black queens on one hand, or, have them in mentor roles to white queens who will get the hero edit on the other hand. The latter is also a racist trope used in fiction, so it's not surprising that Drag Race producers went for it. And now, with all of the changes that they've done, Drag Race now gives the black queens the overly positive edit, which again is not a step in the right direction. It's all surface level bullshit. Is it possible that some of these white queens had or have so many fans because of their race? Yeah, definitely. We do see that the white queens tend to have more followers and fans and get more opportunities. However, let me raise a counter question. If we, as a society, gravitate towards people that we most relate to, at least on a surface level, then why aren't there as many non-white people watching Drag Race? Obviously, I don't subscribe to the whole, oh, you're the same ethnicity as me, / we have some similar features, so I'm going to root for you idea. But I know that many people do, especially the ones in the USA and especially the younger fans. Not fully developed people. My 3 all-time favorite queens are Tatiana, Jujubee, and Bob the Drag Queen. I mean, other than all of us possessing massive talents and being highly humble, we do not look alike. But then again, on the other hand, people of color might also not feel welcome by Drag Race by their portrayal of them. That's also a very strong possibility. Do you see how I gave layers and different answers and examples to the same question that are all valid? Do you see how there isn't universal truth when it comes to this stuff? Before we end this video and I read the comments from Patreon, I also want to mention another thing. Do you notice how throughout this entire video I have only talked about black or white queens? Yeah, well, that's because of, again, Drag Race itself, and then the culture in the US. Asian queens have almost exclusively been underappreciated by the show and its fandom, as have Latino queens and really any foreign queens. Native American queens, what is that? Literally what? Who? The irony of 5 seasons of the show having the I'm an American motif and not ever once casting a queen that fully embraces her Native American heritage. Yikes! This is a very complex subject that cannot be boiled down to just blonde and white. There are many things that factor into this, and again, there is not a one concrete, 100% all-encompassing universal answer. So, blonde and white? I don't think. Now, of course, I asked my supporters on Patreon what they thought of this idea of blonde and white, and here's what they said. First comment we have is from Max. He says, okay, first of all, the only queen that wasn't a person of color when All-Stars 1 happened was Sharon Giddles, so there was no need to have a winner that made the winning circle more diverse. Chad's win did not have to do with their race. All-Stars 2 also did not suffer from we did not have a blank winner yet, or we did not have a blank winner since season blank syndrome, because fans were too busy complaining that Katya, a white queen, did not win over another white queen, and ignoring yet another white queen that could have won too. Either of them would not have won because of their race. On All-Stars 3, people started complaining about a white queen winning over a black queen. But the black queen in question was eliminated by a twist that left no room for the production to mingle while completely ignoring two other black queens that were right there. In the end, Trixie won over Kennedy, not because of her race, but because she did better in the competition, and probably also because she was more marketable. Trixie has the most successful brand out there out of any Rue girl. In my opinion, Naomi's opinion is valid, but it's ignoring the context. In all three of these seasons, the winner did perform the best out of the final choices. Those queens were all white queens, but that is more due to coincidence. The first three original seasons all had non-white queens, not just as winners, but also runner-ups, the only exception being Raven. That being said, they did cast a lot more white queens for the first three All-Star seasons. Ironically, when they cast All-Stars 4, only two of them were white, and the queen who performed the best, well, maybe they had the two winners outcome planned all along. I just don't know why they cast Trinity for All-Stars 4 at all if they did not want a white queen to win. They could have cast someone else that was not a strong competitor. Nicole Page Brooks would have been fun. Conclusion. The statement is valid for all the good reasons, but completely ignoring the context. If Naomi has valid arguments why Jujubee should have won All-Stars 1 or Roxy should have won All-Stars 2, I would like to hear it. Otherwise, I can just conclude that she's pissed because of the All-Stars 3 jury twist. And then also, Shakiriana said this. I don't think that this is a thing, but what I will say is that every time that there is an uproar of an issue the show has, it will do anything to prove wrong. This was the first year since they called out the winners being white that the winner of a normal season had won. When RuPaul was considered transphobic, they crowned a trans performer. I don't know, don't be surprised if there are enough backlash for lack of other ethnic groups missing in the Hall of Fame in the US season that they will get representation in less than a year. Which is sad. Now, KP did have a different take on this. They say, so I was reading the other comments, and I see their POV, but I think the category is very much real. When Drag Race started to become popular amongst young white queer people, it in turn began to pander to that demographic to get ratings up, which just so happened to have been around the time that All Stars 2 was filmed and released. In this era of Drag Race, it became apparently clear who they were favoring in terms of edit. As we know, Drag Race has never been pure competition, but also includes who can represent the RuPaul brand, at the time, the best, in its criteria of who should be the winner. If it wasn't, then Ongina or Nina would have won season 1, like you said in one of his past videos. So, when it was the best option to have white skinny blonde queens represent the brand, they did that. Albeit, they overdid, but still. Therefore, in my mind, the category exists, but whatever can help RuPaul gain popularity and points amongst its fan base, old and new. Disclaimer, no hate to literally any queen, they're all sickening. Bearing the ones who are on the show and have had some stuff come up afterwards. We know who I'm talking about. And you know what the funny thing is? All three of these people are correct. Ain't that something? And that's it. That's the video. This was all over the place, and I tried my best to keep it as concrete and concise as possible. Somebody will probably write about me defending white queens, which, if that's what you took from this video, I hope you can take that energy and apply it to something productive someday soon. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and thank you for watching.